This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 10th of April 2020 and I am 2J.
I'm Tom.
And I am GK, and in case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Standard, drug hope as Kenya braces for the worst. In the Daily Nation, the change makers. And in the Star, COVID, Kenya to use Japanese flu drug. So some good news there, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Happy Good Friday to everybody.
Can you say that? Happy Good Friday.
I think you can.
Okay.
Pasaka Ibambe.
Pasaka Ibambe.
It's going to be different. People aren't traveling. People aren't going where they're normally used to. But hopefully you make good of the circumstances as they are.
Very true.
So can we begin with the Standard and the Star? Because they
Yes.
both talk about the Japanese flu drug.
Absolutely. So the Standard, drug hope as Kenya braces for the worst.
Yep.
And the drug hope is this one. The Japanese have invented a drug called favipiravir. And this is a COVID-19 drug. And apparently it is working. And in Japan and in China, it has, I think, today about 11 patients. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what they're saying is that compared to the 11-day progress period that you normally see, when you take this drug, people are healing or they're being seen to be treated in 4 days rather than 11.
11 days, correct. Okay.
And it also improves the lung function of 9 out of 10 patients. So I think it's a working drug.
Yes, and I see Israel is one of the countries that has actually adopted this drug and is using it on its patients.
Fantastic.
But I don't want to spend time on this new drug.
Well, before you go there, can I just say that this drug, this pandemic is showing us the importance of working together.
Yes.
That a discovery in one place can sort of help in another area. And so we all have to work together in that effort.
I agree.
However, you're going to say something?
Yes. Something has disturbed me. And I was watching some videos of Africans in China, in Guangzhou, being kicked out of hotels and their homes. And I've seen videos of Kenyans as well, being kicked out of their homes and, being told to stay in the streets because the Chinese think they're the ones who are going to spread COVID. Now look, in the same way the Germans were asked to pay reparations after World War I in 1919 to the tune of about 132 billion gold marks, or the equivalent 33 billion US dollars, I think China should be made to pay reparations for this coronavirus.
To the world?
To the world. And you see, Boris Johnson is of the view that China should compensate England for about 300 billion sterling pounds. Now look, for leverage purposes, there's a guy called Jaguar who said China should forgive Kenya's debt.
Did you say for leverage purposes?
Yes, for leverage purposes.
All right.
Now, this guy called Jaguar, he doesn't make the most intelligent statements sometimes, but I agree with him when he says that China should forgive the debt that it has given to African countries because they have slowed down economies. I mean, the virus has slowed down economies. Look, if Uhuru Kenyatta and other African leaders meet together for a special sitting of the AU and say, as African countries, we have suffered a lot. And on the basis of that, we want China
reparations
to pay us back for the kind of damage Corona has done, and then join England, the EU, and America in asking China to pay for reparations, then we will not have our SGR.
But just throwing a spanner in the works, I mean, I think everybody has become aware of some of the multitude of conspiracy theories that are floating around WhatsApp groups right now. Who's to say that this coronavirus didn't even originate from the US? If you talk about like Dr. Charles Lieber, exactly, bioterrorism or just kind of espionage kind of situation, why should we make China bear the brunt of those reparation costs?
The beauty about this is this. If England agrees, if Trump agrees, if all Africa meets and say, hey, by the way, we have a debt that we have to pay, and this debt is going to take us back in our economy, let's ask China to pay for this. You see what China will do? China will say, Sawa, we will not pay you, but what you owe us, we cancel.
Well, this is the thing. I think it's a cost of global interdependence. You all agreed to the contract terms of globalization, of trading with each other. And this is one of the risks of doing trade in this highly connected way.
But
our economies are highly interconnected, which means when something like this happens,
it affects everybody.
In the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009, I didn't hear anyone saying that the US should compensate Kenya for trade in flowers.
Fantastic.
Like that.
That's a beautiful argument.
We didn't do that.
That's a beautiful argument. But you see, what we can do is if Trump says, let's ask China to pay reparations, if Boris Johnson says, let's ask China to pay reparations, then Africa should ride on that boat.
Come together.
Yes, because where are the resources that are going to China? Where are they coming from? It's coming from Africa.
Interesting time.
2M, I think a lot of this started when you quoted Jaguar as your main source. So let's just leave it at that.
He wasn't my main source. It's just that he was speaking to the hustlers. And it did not. The argument was not that articulate, but he had a point. He had a point. And
what's interesting though is that it can go both ways. America is the biggest economy of the world.
Correct.
And then you also have China, which is sort of the largest producer of a lot of the things
goods,
that we rely on. So both have the ability to hold us hostage.
Yes.
Because if supplies stop coming from China and America stops buying, I mean, there's a whole...
You know.
And I think, GK, what you're talking about speaks to the beauty of what this situation has forced Kenya to do. It's forced us to find ways to manufacture,
diversify,
to industrialize in ways that we never thought we would have to right now.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of that also speaks to the headline from the Daily Nation, where you see the private sector coming together to find solutions for this problem.
You know, I agree with GK. Because it took Germany to pay 92 years to pay the reparations of this $33 billion. Now, if China is put in this position, trust me, it may not be able to pay this amount of money, but it will ask that the debt owed to China be cancelled, and then that everyone will be on an equal footing.
Well, there you have 2M's proposal. We do have a 3-part criteria that we normally use to break down the headlines. We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? I like both the Standard and the Star, interestingly.
Yes.
But let's look at the Daily Nation, the change makers. So what's happening here is that they're basically chronicling how the private sector has come together in a very philanthropic way to come and fight COVID-19 in Kenya. So it initially talks about the Safe Hands Kenya campaign that aims to distribute free soap, sanitizers, surface cleansers, and masks to Kenyans. And they're going to do this using a new technology, some geospatial demand and supply allocation map that will collectively distribute these goods efficiently and transparently to Kenyans.
Correct.
You also have them talking about Rotary Club, how Rotary Club is putting together its members to raise money for the efforts. But interestingly, and maybe they didn't mention, is Jane Karuku, who's been made the chairwoman of the COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund.
Fantastic.
Board, and congratulations on being trusted on this, magnanimous task, where you will be able to, they will raise money from the private sector to go to medical facilities and the very poor. And I think Co-op Bank has made a whopping 100 million shilling donation already. And you can basically contribute to this fund. I think the details are online through Absa Bank. And they will continue to publicize the expenditure and spendings and contributions that are received publicly. So there will be full transparency. And I think another governor that has sort of stepped up is Joho. Mombasa 001 has come together in a big way and are really stepping up. The billionaires, philanthropists, and people are coming together to do good things. So I hope all the other counties as well. I know we have Governor Charity Ngulo as well, who is doing wonders with Kikotech and providing masks. So we, everybody should just step up to the plate.
And I think on that note, the Daily Nation deserves the winning headline.
With change makers?
Absolutely.
Yes, may they be inspired.
Definitely.
So there we have our winning headline from the Daily Nation, change makers. Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a 3-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy? What do we have?
In the Daily Nation. Right?
Yes. What do we have?
You've just kept quiet. Well, in the spirit of Easter, we have a crucifix. And on the crucifix is Jesus with the head of the world. And then you have the army guy, the cavalry, who is there with the head of coronavirus and his spear. And yeah.
So these are Pharaoh's people, correct?
Yes.
Pharaoh's soldiers.
Yeah.
And Jesus is next, but there's no one next. Barnabas the thief is not here.
They've not been shown, just the world in the form of Jesus.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to show that coronavirus has crucified or has put, a stop on what the world is doing.
So the world has been crucified by coronavirus.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be in relation to Easter, all of those.
But on Monday, the world will rise. Correct? Because it's Jesus resurrected on.
Have you been reading your Bible?
Yes.
Well done. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then.
Next standard.
Yeah.
It's the Last Supper.
And he's alone. Oh
no,
my goodness, Gado. What?
And Jesus is wearing a mask, is he not?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the cartoon is a replica of the famous painting by Leonardo da Vinci of the Last Supper.
Yes.
And homeboy is by himself. Coronavirus. He's social distancing.
Social distancing, exactly.
As we all will be this weekend.
Yes.
And then in the Star,
you have a caricature of William RUTO. Oh man, that presser was so bad yesterday. But anyway, in his jacket is Uhuru Kenyatta and CS Mutahi Kagwe. And the caption there is, my message to Kenyans is blah, 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 ...
Alama ya dukuduku.
Alama ya dukuduku is exclamation mark.
Oh, what is this?
It's continuation marks. Now, you see...
of course, the context is the speech that DP made yesterday.
Yes.
But I want to ask this question. As much as people are making fun of him for maybe repeating some of the same things that the president and CS Kagwe said, maybe he was dog whistling to people that we're not aware of. Maybe he was speaking directly to the Hustler Nation in the same way that the president went and spoke on the vernacular radio stations. Maybe this was the DP's way of speaking directly to the hustlers.
Yeah, but I think what people are complaining about is that he seemed so out of character. He didn't speak off the cuff. He read a speech which is not characteristic of him. Yeah. And I think it just felt very like, I'm just here to be seen and not heard. They didn't have the charisma that you normally see with him.
True.
He was so tensed. If I was him, I would have taken a video of myself in the house doing exercises.
Like Museveni.
Why would you want to tell us what Kagwe has said, what Uhuru has said? For goodness sake, we had 3 weeks ago. I mean, what is that new thing you're going to tell us about Corona that we do not know?
Yeah.
But I think he should have, or maybe even take a video of himself giving biscuits to people and to hustlers, and then say, I'm giving hustler biscuits.
Just like you said at the beginning of your sentence, if you were him, which you are not. So
okay, so who do we give our winning cartoon? I quite like Gado's
cartoon is fantastic.
Gado's cartoon is very good, but I'll not tell that to my pastor because I might just get sanctioned.
Oh my goodness.
So there we have it. Gado gives us our winning cartoon from the Standard.
Absolutely.
What is our final thought?
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Mistakes Were Made, but Not By Me. And it is authored by Carlos Tavris and Elliot Aronson.
Nice.
Carol.
Before you do...
is it Carol?
Carol.
Before you do, may I give the summary of the week?
Of course.
So this week we looked at how we can adjust to our new normal. In the age of coronavirus and social distancing and staying at home. How can we adjust to some of these things and also reflect on some of the information we're being given? So on Monday, we looked at a book called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. Here we explored why it is so hard to make lasting changes in our companies, communities, and our own lives. And they propose that the primary obstacle is actually built into our own minds.
Correct.
The rational mind, system 2, and the emotional mind, system 1.
Yeah.
And we have seen this conflict of system 1 and 2 as we have adjusted to government rules on curfew and containment.
Yes.
On Tuesday, we looked at The Honest Truth About Dishonesty by Dan Ariely. And here we looked at the rationale or motives that drive us to cheat. And this was particularly important as we have seen people attempt to cheat the system when new rules were being imposed during coronavirus. We learned about how individuals will ultimately cheat if the benefits outweigh the costs. However, realizing that in this case, cheating or breaking the rules in the time of pandemic has a high human cost. On Wednesday, we looked at Obedience to Authority, an experimental view by Stanley Milgram, which looked at the extent to which people will obey orders from authority figures, regardless of consequence. And we saw the darker side of obedience through things like genocides and wars. On Thursday, we looked at Numbers Rule Your World, the hidden influence of probability and statistics on everything that you do, by Kaiser Fang. And it was an interesting book on how numbers and statistics can improve decision making and your worldview. So a lot of statistics have been flying around about coronavirus, and this book helped us question the numbers and even observe patterns and put them into context. And today we're looking at deception, or an explanation of self-deception.
Yeah. So mistakes were made, but not by me.
Yeah.
So just a story that is referenced in the book.
Yeah.
More than 60 years ago, a young social psychologist named Leon Festinger and two associates infiltrated a group of people who believed that the world was about to end on December 21st, 1954. So as they went in, they wanted to understand how the group would behave when the prophecy failed, because they believed that the prophecy would fail.
Correct.
So the group's leader, who the researchers used the name, and they called her Marianne Keech, promised that the faithful would be picked up by a flying saucer and elevated to safety on midnight on December 20th. So many of her followers had quit their jobs, they gave away their houses, and they spent their savings in anticipation of the end of the world. Because who needs money when you're in outer space? But others waited in anticipation or fear in their home. And the funny thing is, and they note this, that this woman, Mrs. Keech, her husband waited, because he was a non-believer. He went to bed early and he slept soundly through the night while his wife and her followers prayed in the living room. So the psychologist here, he made two predictions. The first one is that the believers who had not made a strong commitment to the prophecy would quietly and slowly lose their faith in this Mrs. Keech. But the second was that those who had given away their possessions and waited with other believers for the end of the world would actually increase their belief in this woman's mystical ability. In fact, they would actually do everything to get others to join them. So at midnight, with no sign of a spaceship, the group was feeling nervous. By 2 a.m., they were getting worried. At 4:45 a.m., Mrs. Keech had a new vision. The world had been spared. And she said it is because of the impressive faith of the group that God had decided to have mercy on them. And she said a lot of things. Mighty is the word of God, and by his word ye have been saved, and so on and so forth.
Oh, amen.
So many of the no, not amen. So many of the group members who had failed to evangelize before the December 21st decided to call the press and report on this miracle. But this prediction of this woman had failed. But the prediction of the psychologist had not. He was very true in what he thought would happen. And he said that the engine that drives self-justification is what he calls cognitive dissonance. And just a quick definition. Cognitive dissonance is a state of tension that occurs whenever a person holds two cognitions. And a cognition is an idea, a belief, an opinion, or an attitude. So it's when you hold two beliefs that are psychologically inconsistent. For example, you may say that smoking is dumb, but you smoke. You may say that I need to stay indoors to avoid the coronavirus, but you hold a curfew party or something like that. So most people know that they are meant to learn from their mistakes. And in this moment of global pandemic, we have the opportunity not only to learn from our mistakes, but the mistakes of the world right now. But the question I think this book maybe highlights for us is, are we learning? And at the end of the day, if mistakes are made, who is to blame? So it deals with cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias, and other cognitive biases, and it uses anecdotal, historical, and scientific evidence to explain why we keep making mistakes quietly and why this is even worse than just admitting those mistakes. So it's an insightful examination into how and why we self-justify everything that we do and the dangers of a human tendency to do so. So one of the things that she talks about is most people, when directly confronted with evidence that they are wrong, don't change their mind, but actually double down. They try to convince themselves more so that they are right. And as humans, I think most of the time, we like to justify our attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors to protect ourselves from believing that we are wrong. And I think in this moment of corona, I think this is something that we can prove to be very true.
Absolutely. My takeaway from this is, and to everyone out there, please, if you think you're stupid, stop thinking you're stupid just because you make mistakes. And I'll give you a personal experience of mine. I wasn't the best in class back in primary school, and I thought I was very dumb because my marks were not the best. But I had to go through some evolution of sorts, and I had just to discover myself, just to realize that first you need to be a little bit of a rebel, just to follow some of the lessons we've learned this week. But where am I going with this? You see, in a study that was comparing US education and Chinese and Japanese education, they realized that American students were really never that confident. Because they never wanted to admit their mistakes.
Yeah.
It was found that the American students were embarrassed to make mistakes so that they would never tackle difficult math problems in front of class. Now, if you compare this to the Japanese and the Chinese, how they used to do their thing was, if a student got the lowest mark in class, they would be taken in front of that board, they would solve that math problem in front of the class while the class was watching, and the class would actually help them solve that problem, that math problem, and that would ensure that the next time they saw the problem, they would solve it without the help of the class. Yeah. And this is because in Asian cultures, they see mistakes as part of life. You know, you can go through part of life and you progress, but the ingredient that is there is a mistake. And it's something that we have also learned this week. The growth mindset is very important. Why? Because what we've learned is, in human beings think in two ways. You execute, you plan and then you execute. You do not leave that room for failure in the middle. And that room for failure in the middle is to do a dry run as to how life will go. Yeah. And I just want to read a small paragraph as to how these Carol, Travis, and Elliot Aronson think that we should admit mistakes. She says that the ultimate correction for the tunnel vision that afflicts all of us mortals is more light, because most of us are not self-correcting, and because of our blind spot, keeps us from knowing that we need to be external. Sorry, let me repeat that again. The ultimate correction for the tunnel vision that afflicts all of us mortals is more light, because most of us are not self-correcting, and because our blind spots keep us from knowing that we need to be. External procedures must be in place to correct the errors that human beings will inevitably make and reduce the chances of future ones.
Okay. So mistakes are good.
Mistakes are good.
And you must admit them.
You must admit them.
So very quickly, he talks about memories. And I thought this was interesting because most of us will look back years from now and think about coronavirus and what it did to our lives. But he says memories are an interesting thing. They're your self-justifying historian. Because with your memories, little did you know, a lot of the time you're reconstructing and it's subject to confabulation. So basically you're confusing events as your own. Maybe they happen to someone else, but you will think that they're yours. But one of the key things he talks about is this victim narrative. That a lot of people want to feel weishe, you want to feel, you know, like, oh, this happened to me and it was so traumatic. And so there's a tendency to remember things worse than they were, or more traumatic to you than they were. So just a note here. What will you remember about coronavirus, or what do you think will remain true about your memories around this time? So yesterday we had a challenge. We asked you, if you saw a boat filled with people, yet there isn't a single person on board, how is that possible? And the answer was that all the people on board were married. So a lot of you got that right. And so today's challenge: you will throw me away when you want to use me. You will take me in when you don't want to use me. What am I? So drop your comments in our YouTube section. I want to leave you with this. Dr. Miles Monroe taught us that crisis can have a silver lining. Crisis can be an incubator of creativity. When things fall apart, it forces us to think outside the box. Crisis demands a new way of thinking about old ideas and old problems. And this crisis is an opportunity to improve and advance old ideas, old societies, old institutions, among other things, even the way we run our families. Amen. Please have a great Easter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Pan Free to Air, and so.